Hello YouTube, Nathan Dewey here, giving my thoughts on the Matt Freeman Balisong number 9. In the spirit of how he does his videos, I'm filming outside, and before we get to the knife, here's some images of pets. This one's Danny. I think he's about 4. This isn't actually our dog, this is my sister's dog. We're sitting him for the week as they are out on vacation. Danny! Yay, Danny. He's a rescue. You can kind of tell about the lack of fur on the backside, but other than that, he's a perfectly adjusted dog. And let's see if I can find you. Faith? Faith! Faith is about 7. Border Collie and Husky. She is the oldest dog we have right now. Our neighborhood allows for 3 dogs, so right now we're at 4. But you know, since we're just watching them, there's a exception. We're looking at. Alright, well, since the last person in the pass around death poop already did a video on flipping, I'm not gonna bother doing that. You know, it's an 8-ounce Balisong. It's heavy, it flips fine. If you're into the heavier knives, it'll do fine. If you're into lighter knives, then why would you even consider something like this? This is all steel construction, pinned. As I think Matt has said before, it is a reminiscence, or at least trying to go back on the tradition of the more old school designs, the Balisong USA, Pacific Cutlery. He's also done channel bullies in brass, again going back on the more old school design. So yeah, this is one of his earlier ones. I think this is the this is his daily knife, carry knife, and it was featured in his article on Blade. I said in the forums that I was going to give some critiques about just the overall construction. Normally I would not tell a maker like how to do something specifically, but I believe that in this situation I can kind of offer some very, very concise criticism for 2 reasons. Like, A, if you remember him saying a while back that I was his somewhat inspiration for making Balisongs. Matt was originally a leather guy before he went into knives, and I think he was leather and knife modding, so I'm kind of where he got the inspiration from, and seeing how our means of production are very similar, I think I can also offer some very helpful feedback in just getting the most out of the limited rudimentary equipment, being belt grinder, Dremel tool, random hand tools, ghetto forge, vise, and things of that nature. You know, he's definitely a backyard builder, and that is where I really can relate to him and how this thing was put together. Okay, first criticism, the pivots. This has a bushing system. The play is fine. It's just bushings, stainless steel bushings with no washers. There's nothing inherently wrong with not having washers, but if you'll notice on the tang surface, because there's no washers, you do notice the wear pattern along this region. And if you, obviously this wasn't meant to be super perfect, you can tell it still has some patina left over from the heat treat. But if you were to really shine this up and you wanted to keep it look nicing, washers are a must. Bushing and washer system, it just looks better. It's less prone to superficial wear, and ultimately it'll make the value of your knife better because it'll psychologically last longer. Even though this will probably last just as long as any other Balisong, the fact that more attention was put into the fact that it's not going to get all, you know, worn down near the pivot area, it does provide some level of confidence in what you have. Because ultimately, if you're not confident in the knife, you're not going to use it. This knife has confidence in it, but again, superficially, some things might be bothersome to other people. Some people are more picky than others, so just something to consider. Put in some washers, zero out the play, make it nicer. Also, going back on the bushings, I took this apart and I discovered that the bushings are pretty much drop fit. There's a difference between a slip fit and a oversized hole. The pivot holes are oversized, the bushing just kind of drops through, and the holes for the pivot pins are oversized, so it actually has play. Let's try to do this one-handed. So the pivot has place to move, and again, it goes back to more slop. So, and also, even though I don't really press fit my pivots personally, I do allow for a pretty tight fit, so the pin will not just rotate. These pins rotate freely. You have to kind of squeeze down the handles to get it to tighten up, and it allows for what's called take up, where you'll have the I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling. I'm trying to do this in one take, so please forgive me. If anything I forget, I'll just put it in annotation. So basically, I'm just harping on tolerances of the action. And actually, what I would suggest is you do an undersized hole. And since you're using a Dremel tool, there are various tools that you can use with the Dremel attachment where you can just very easily ream the pieces by hand and allow for a more precise slip fit. For example, when I'm doing a pivot, I will use either this carbide cutting tool or this small cylindrical stone, just to ream it just enough. You don't want to, less is definitely more when you're talking about making holes for the pivots. You don't want it to be too small, otherwise it'll snag, and you don't want it too loose, otherwise it'll be sloppy, and it just, it's just one thing on top of another that'll make the action sloppier, and it'll just have more play than it realistically has to. The tang pins. The tang pins are relatively short and very deeply mushroomed. I'll try to get this on camera, but the tang pins have actually been beaten so much that they are loose, but because of the mushrooming is so substantial, they're not going to come out, but they are loose because you can actually get this to rattle. Hope you can hear that. So the pin is loose, it's short, it's sharp, it's more prone to deforming. Some people think that you need super big tang pins for a tight lockup. That's not necessarily true. You need an adequate size. Like for this spacing of the pivots, I'm thinking 5 32nd stock. You don't need 3/16 pins. And actually, if you go with the smaller size pins, it'll allow for more serviceability in the future, because the smaller pins are easier to replace with a slightly larger pin. I would suggest press fitting these, make the holes slightly smaller, force the pin through, and have it go the entire thickness of the handle for proper surface area. Again, going back on the thinner pin, which means you don't have to really eat out the tang cup area, and you're removing less material, and ultimately it will look nicer. Hole positioning, or hole pattern. I can tell you right now that this is one of the hardest things to do when it comes to doing this stuff by hand. Matt did a pretty good job on this. You know, it doesn't really look asymmetrical except for this juncture right here. As I understand, it was done afterthought. This originally had a latch, but that got loose, so he just took it off. A good way, you know, and this was a big problem for me for a long time, was the positioning of the hole. Sometimes with the drill bit, you get what's called walking. It's like where you position it a certain place, but because of the way the drill bit kind of starts to sit and bite into the material, it's always off on one side. So what I suggest is you do two things. First of all, you draw crosshairs, preferably with a thin marker like or a mechanical pencil. And before you even start drilling, you use, let me see where I can find it, you use one of these. This is a standard hardened steel punch. You can get these at a True Value. What you do is, after the crosshairing, you tap it with a hammer, you mark the center, you drill. Okay, now this is important. After you make the mark, you use an undersized drill bit, meaning if you're drilling a 3/16 hole, start with something smaller, like a 1/8 or 5/32, or for me, like the smallest drill bit you have, which would be like a 1/16. So you allow the 1/16 bit to sit into the mark, the slight kind of indentation, which allows the drill bit to take purchase and to not walk. And right there, you're eliminating the issue of a blade, or the positioning of the pivots or the turning pins of being kind of offset or wanky, or like sometimes the blade will kind of be canted one side or another, or the handles, like one will be positioned up here and the other like slightly down there. And now this one is pretty good. It's pretty straight, but I can imagine because of the unevenness of the tang cups that there was a little bit of that factor into making this Balisong. Again, another thing to consider. What else? Another good looking face. Good mutt face. Danny. Okay, intermission over. What else? Okay, we talked about the bushings, we talked about the tang pins, we talked about the holes. The handle dimensions are actually okay. I really have no real problem with them. They're adequately thick. They're actually less than 1/2 of an inch. 1/2 of an inch is pretty much the standard by which all competition grade flippers are judged, like the 42, Alpha Beast, Basilisk, I think, Archangel. It's adequately long. It's approximately Kimara size or something like that. So if you can flip a Kimara, you'll have no problems with this. I would suggest making the handles less wide. Let me get the calipers out. Another tool I use a lot, just ordinary plastic calipers. On the outside, it is 1, 2, 3, 4. It is a C hair above 5/8. If you know Matt Freeman, you know that expression. And near the pivot is about 1/2 an inch, or a C hair under 1/2 an inch. So what I would suggest, just so it's not super bulky to wrap your hand around, also because of the blade to handle ratio, if you look when closed, there's quite a bit of room left in the blade. So realistically speaking, you could have made the blade wider, or you could have made the handles more narrow, just so it balances out and it doesn't look so I guess ill-proportioned, and I'm guilty of that too, but I am working on that. You know, it's one of those things where, like, I'm certain Matt has discussed before, that where a piece will just kind of take its own course. It takes on a personality and an appearance of its own. Sometimes something on paper just does not entirely translate until you actually start to make it, and then you start thinking, oh, okay, that works, that has charm. Blade shape is fine, no real complaints. Sharpened swedge, got like a zero grind, no issues. The spine is rounded. I actually like the thick blade on this, so I like the idea of a thick, heavy steel blade with thick, heavy handles. So the thicknesses are good. Make the handles a little bit more narrow, or maybe make the blade a little bit wider, just so it evens out aesthetically and in terms of lines and overall use. Oh, again, going back on the position of the pins, you can see right here. Try to get that to focus. When he was making this lashless, you can see that he actually started to grind into the pin, and you can also tell that this pin is a different grade than these pins. So again, going back on, I understand the concept of you use what you have, but in the attempt of making something better or just something more precise, it is good to have like stock pin stock, or what I do now is I save up a bunch of drill bits that are of the same grade, and I use those just so there's a consistency. You use one, you use for the other, so you don't have this. Also, just overall planning ahead. I prefer graph paper. From what I've seen, his sketches are just, from what I have seen, Matt's sketches are typically like these drawings of markers. There's no real precise dimensions on there. Again, going back on the crosshairs and the just planning more things ahead, just so it comes out better. I'm not saying this doesn't have charm, it definitely does, but if this had a little bit more pre-thought into it, it would have been a whole lot nicer and just overall more desirable to the broader public. I think Matt is on his 20th Balisong, something like that, and I hope people take these criticisms into consideration. Just a overall concept of improving and taking pride in your work and being, I don't know, I guess accountable. For those who probably follow his channel, Matt quit drinking, so this was made during a point of his life where he was having some substance problems, but he's a big boy, he can handle it. So hopefully, as Matt continues to improve and take pride in his work and sober up and be held accountable, that he will continue to make really good stuff, and he will have a wider audience. Alright, well, that's my very long ramblings and criticism on this earlier Matt Freeman Balisong, in the spirit that he does better in the future, and that him and me would both spur each other on in our craft. Thanks for looking, take care.